He convinced the smartest investors on earth that renting out office space was a revolution. He raised $47 billion. He spent company money on private jets, tequila, and a wave pool. He fired hundreds of employees and then made them chant his name. And when the whole thing collapsed, he walked away with $1.7 billion. The employees got nothing. This is the story of Adam Neumann, and it is the most insane business story of the 21st century. Before we go any further, here is something that will make your jaw drop. When WeWork finally showed the world its real financial numbers, the company was losing $5,000 every single minute. Not per day, not per hour. Every single minute. Around the clock. 7 days a week. And investors had valued it at $47 billion. How does something like this happen? How do the smartest people on earth hand billions of dollars to a man running a company that is hemorrhaging money at that speed? That is exactly what we are going to find out today. Adam Neumann was born in Israel in 1979. His childhood was not easy. His parents divorced when he was young. He moved between different homes, different schools, different countries. He spent time on a kibbutz, a communal farming community, where everyone shared everything and worked together toward a common goal. He was also diagnosed with dyslexia as a child, which made school deeply frustrating, and which he later said taught him to think differently from everyone around him. He learned to listen more than he read. He learned to persuade more than he studied. He learned that if you could make people feel something strongly enough, the details mattered far less than the feeling. This lesson would shape everything he ever built. After finishing his military service in the Israeli Navy, Neumann moved to New York in his mid-20s with almost nothing. He tried several businesses that went nowhere. He sold baby clothes with knee pads built in for crawling infants. It did not work. He tried importing women's heeled shoes from Israel. That did not work either. He lived in a small apartment, struggled to pay bills, and watched the city move around him at a speed that felt both exciting and completely indifferent to whether he succeeded or failed. But in those early failures, Neumann was learning something more important than any product he was selling. He was learning how to talk to people, how to walk into a room and make everyone in it believe that whatever he was saying was the most important thing they had ever heard. He was developing a gift for vision, for painting pictures of the future, so vivid and so compelling that investors and partners and employees would hand him money and loyalty before they had time to ask whether the picture was real. In 2008, Neumann met Rebecca Paltrow, a cousin of the actress Gwyneth Paltrow. Their connection was immediate and intense. Rebecca was spiritual, ambitious, and deeply interested in the idea that business could be a vehicle for changing the world at a fundamental level. She and Adam were, in many ways, perfectly matched. She believed in his vision completely. She encouraged his most expansive thinking. She told him to dream bigger, to think beyond ordinary success, to pursue something historic. When they married, they became not just a couple but a kind of joint force. Two people who reinforced each other's certainty that they were destined for something extraordinary. Rebecca would eventually take a formal role at WeWork, running its school and education initiatives. And her influence on Adam's thinking and on the culture of the company was profound and constant throughout its rise. In 2010, Neumann and his co-founder Miguel McKelvey opened the first WeWork location in New York City. The idea was simple. Take large commercial office spaces, divide them into smaller units, and rent them to freelancers, startups, and small businesses who needed flexible workspace without long-term leases. Shared kitchens, free coffee, fast Wi-Fi, a sense of energy and community. It was not a new idea. Shared office spaces had existed for decades, but Neumann did something that changed everything. He refused to call it a shared office space. He called it a community. He called it a movement. He said WeWork was not just renting desks. It was elevating the world's consciousness. He said the company's mission was to change the way people work, to create a world where people make a life, not just a living. Investors heard this, and they did not hear a landlord who divided up office floors. They heard Steve Jobs. They heard Elon Musk. They heard the future. And they opened their wallets. The money started coming in fast. Within a few years, WeWork had expanded to dozens of cities. The offices were beautiful, genuinely beautiful, with exposed brick walls and craft beer on tap and ping pong tables and the kind of carefully designed environment that made young professionals feel like they were working in a startup, even if they were just doing spreadsheets for a mid-sized accounting firm. The aesthetic was perfect, the energy was real, and Adam Neumann was everywhere, giving speeches, doing interviews, telling anyone who would listen that WeWork was going to be the most valuable company in the world. The culture inside WeWork was unlike anything most employees had ever experienced. Neumann held all-hands meetings that felt more like religious revivals than corporate gatherings. He would walk onto a stage with the energy of a rock star, music pumping, employees cheering. He talked about purpose and meaning and changing the world. He told his employees they were not just workers, they were members of a movement. He used the language of family constantly. We are all family here. We take care of each other. We are building something together that will outlast all of us. Employees believed him. Many of them genuinely loved working there. They wore WeWork branded clothing. They socialized with each other outside of work. They recruited their friends to join. The sense of belonging that Neumann had promised was real in the offices, even as the financial reality behind it was completely fictional. But there was a darker side to this culture that not everyone saw. Neumann demanded absolute loyalty. Employees who questioned his decisions or raised concerns were marginalized or pushed out. The company had a policy of asking departing employees to sign non-disclosure agreements before receiving any severance, effectively silencing anyone who might speak publicly about what they had witnessed inside. Neumann made unilateral decisions that affected thousands of people without consultation or explanation. He once flew back from a trip to Israel, gathered hundreds of employees, and laid them off on the spot. Then, he brought out a live band and encouraged the remaining employees to party. People who had just lost their jobs were standing in the room while their former colleagues danced. The message was unmistakable. The community only included you as long as you were useful. Then SoftBank arrived, and everything went completely insane. SoftBank is a Japanese technology investment firm run by a man named Masayoshi Son. Son had made one of the greatest investments in history when he put $20 million into a tiny Chinese startup called Alibaba in 2000 and watched it become worth $60 billion. This experience had given Son a philosophy. He believed in betting enormous sums on visionary founders. He believed that the bigger and bolder the vision, the bigger the potential return. He created a fund called the Vision Fund with nearly $100 billion in capital, the largest technology investment fund ever assembled. And when Son met Adam Neumann in 2017, he saw something that made his eyes light up. He saw a man who talked about changing the world with the same certainty and intensity as the founders who had already changed it. In a 4-minute conversation in the back of an SUV, Son committed $4.4 billion to WeWork. $4.4 billion. 4 minutes. He later told Neumann that in the fight between a smart person and a crazy person, the crazy person wins. He said Neumann needed to be crazier. Adam Neumann took this as permission. With SoftBank's billions behind him, Neumann began spending in ways that seemed designed to test whether money could actually run out. WeWork leased office buildings at an extraordinary pace, signing long-term lease agreements that locked the company into paying rent for years, regardless of whether the spaces were filled. At its peak, WeWork had signed lease obligations totaling $47 billion. The company was taking in perhaps $3 billion per year in revenue. The math was not complicated and it was not good. But as long as SoftBank kept writing checks, the bills could be paid and the expansion could continue. Meanwhile, Neumann's personal behavior was becoming something that no serious company could survive in the light of public scrutiny. He smoked marijuana on a private jet flying to Israel, causing such concern among the crew that the jet reportedly turned around. He kept a bottle of tequila in his office and held meetings that turned into parties. He brought a wave pool, which he planned to install in a WeWork location, to a board meeting to demonstrate his vision. He negotiated a deal in which WeWork paid him millions of dollars to license the word "we" because he had personally trademarked it. His own company paid him millions of dollars for a single word. When this became public, the embarrassment forced him to give the money back, but the fact that it happened at all said everything about the culture he had built. Neumann also made a series of real estate investments that raised serious questions about his judgment and his honesty. He personally bought buildings and then leased them back to meaning WeWork was paying rent directly into his personal pocket while he simultaneously ran the company as its CEO. He bought a private jet for $60 million of company money. He purchased a $120 million mansion in the Hamptons. He bought properties in California, in the Hamptons, in the mountains. He talked openly about his desire to become the world's first trillionaire. He told employees he wanted to live forever, to become Prime Minister of Israel, and eventually to become the President of the world. These were not jokes. He said them with complete sincerity. And somehow, the investors who had given him billions of dollars continued to believe that this man was the visionary the company needed. The moment everything changed came in August 2019. WeWork filed the paperwork to go public on the stock market. And for the first time, ordinary investors and financial analysts could read the actual numbers. What they found was staggering. WeWork had lost one. It contained almost no credible explanation of how WeWork would ever become profitable. Analysts read it and could not believe what they were seeing. The reaction was immediate and brutal. Financial commentators called it one of the most alarming documents ever published by a major company. The $47 billion valuation collapsed almost overnight. Within weeks, it had fallen to perhaps $10 billion. Then lower WeWork canceled its public offering entirely. And the board of directors, who had given Neumann unlimited power for years, finally decided they had seen enough. In September 2019, Adam Neumann was forced to resign as CEO of WeWork. The company was in free fall. Within weeks, WeWork announced it would lay off approximately 2,400 employees, roughly 20% of its global workforce. These were people who had believed in the mission, who had worked long hours for below-market salaries because they thought they were building something historic, who had been told through a family. They received their severance packages and their non-disclosure agreements, and they were gone. Some of them had stock options that were now essentially worthless. Some of them had turned down better-paying jobs at other companies because they believed in what Neumann was selling. They paid the price for that belief with their livelihoods. And Adam Neumann, he received $1.7 billion as part of his exit package. $1.7 billion to leave the company he had nearly destroyed. The disparity between what the founder received and what the employees received was so obscene that it became one of the defining moments of the entire era of Silicon Valley excess. WeWork eventually went public in 2021 at a valuation of approximately $9 billion, down from $47 billion in November 2023. WeWork filed for bankruptcy. The company that had once claimed it would elevate the world's consciousness could not pay its rent. Adam Neumann had already moved on. In 2022, he launched a new company called Flow, a residential real estate venture. Andreessen Horowitz invested $350 million in it at a valuation of over $1 billion before the company had generated a single dollar of revenue. The cycle had not ended. It had simply moved to a new address. The story of WeWork is not just a story about one man. It is a story about a system. A system that decided the normal rules did not apply to certain people. The rules that say a company must have a credible path to profitability. The rules that say a CEO cannot personally profit from transactions with his own company. The rules that say a $47 billion valuation must be connected in some meaningful way to financial reality. All of those rules were suspended for Adam Neumann because he was charming and tall and loud, and he talked about changing the world with a conviction that made billionaires feel like they were part of something historic. When you tell people that normal rules do not apply to visionaries, You create a world where anyone convincing enough to seem like a visionary can steal everything that is not nailed down. And the people who always pay the price are never the ones who wrote the checks. They are always the ones who just needed a job. This has been American Empires. If this story made you angry, good. Subscribe, because next time we are going inside the real Wolf of Wall Street. Jordan Belfort stole from ordinary people, lived like a king, went to prison, and then made millions more by telling people about it. That episode is coming very soon. Until then, remember, empires rise, empires fall, and the truth, no matter how long it takes, always survives.